I've only made 2 promises in my whole life. 2 promises in my whole life something that I would not do. Number 1, I told God I'll never be in ministry. Fortunately, I'm in ministry. I went against my word on that. But then the second thing is I'll never talk about sex in front of my parents. And so I'm just telling you to
You just learned the parts of the body tonight from Charles.
For the first time, 30 years old. Dad apologized to me back there in the back. But so if I look uncomfortable, it's because I am uncomfortable. If I am a little bit squirmy, if I turn red, I am very, very uncomfortable. So I just want to preface it with that. And I'm going to sit down because I'm uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, so let me take a second. I'll introduce, obviously, you know most of our family, but just kind of give you a lineage of Pastor Stan and Angie's kids. So I'm Tyler. I'm the oldest. I'm 30 years old. This is my wife, Alex. We've been married for 8 years. We have 3 kids, 4, 3, and 1.
So they did figure it out.
Yeah, they did figure it out.
No thanks to my father. This is going to be way lighter. I told Charles and Alyssa they are coming to have the talk with my kids when they're of age. I'm not doing that. They can do that. So this is going to be a lot lighter.
Let me just pause real quick. Did they do an amazing job? I just want to echo that. I'm so proud of them. You know, and I've often said this about Pastor Charles and Alyssa. They're wise beyond their years, and they also just really hone in and become students of all things that we need for our kids and for our students. And so I just really, really appreciate that. You're in awesome hands with them, for sure.
Thank you, guys. Give it up for them one more time. They're awesome. Yeah, so I'm 30. I'm the oldest. Then I have a brother. He is 2 years younger than me, so he's 28. He is married, probably been married for 4 or 5 years maybe.
I mean, we just did the math on how long we've been married, so I would never know what.
And they've got a little boy. He's just turned a year, probably a year and a half. And then I've got a sister who is 6 years younger than me, makes her 24 years old. She's married. Yep, she's married. And then I have a 13-year-old little brother. And so most of you guys know his story. He was adopted when he was 4, came to our family when he was 2. And so that's just kind of the lineage. That's the timeline. So as we're asking them questions, as we're talking, just keep that in the back of your head. So Alex, go ahead.
I appreciate you starting with me because it's awkward for you because it's your parents, but they're my in-laws. So I really don't, I don't want to hear this either, but here we go. When did you guys have the birds and the bees talk with each of your kids? And maybe speak on how is it different with Emily, your only daughter, and then your boys?
So I didn't do good. Unfortunately. I did not talk much about it. I was just like, keep it in your pants. You know, what I heard from my dad. We didn't go in with the older kids. So Tyler, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. But
we all fall short of the glory of God.
We all fall short. But not, so I went all in with Micah.
I just want to interrupt you here because I do think kind of how we were parented, and maybe you guys talked about this at your table, but how we were parented, because Stan and I, neither one had models of how to even have the talk, because the two of us never had the talk.
And it was taboo in church. You just didn't talk about it. I mean, nobody talked about any, that was off limits.
Right.
So with Micah, I just went all in. Like, I don't know, there was something about transvestites or something about, I don't know. It was just going crazy in the news. And so I just was like, we're doing some work. And he makes fun of it because we were moving rocks. And he's like, yeah, Dad told me to talk when we're moving rocks. And we just talked about everything. And then hopefully it's going to open up the door where if he has any questions or now we're a lot more honest and open about it. Now with Emily, she did much better.
Yeah. Well, I don't know much better. But I do want to say with the way whatever we said to our children, I looked at it more as an event or a one-time thing, which is not what we were just taught. We were taught by Pastor Charles and Alyssa to kind of make it a kind of more of a conversation. And I think, had I had a teaching like that way back, it probably, one, it makes more sense because you can't do anything in one sitting, right? It's much harder to do that. But back in the day, so Emily is 24, and so middle school was kind of the time. The kids were all in private school, not that that made everything great, but I did feel a little safer. I felt, Charles mentioned the bubble. I did feel like they were in a little bit better of a bubble, and some of them more in a bubble than others. But I've always been a kind of a mom that just resources myself when I feel like I'm lacking. And so I came across, and we actually had 2 of these in the office, but this is what I went through with Emily, which included like a devotional for her. So she did like the devotional for the whole month, and then it was like go away for the weekend and unpack all of this. And it's just called, what is it called? Passport to Purity. And there's CDs in here. We don't even use CDs anymore, but it was a really special weekend where we kind of created just conversation around kind of what she knew. For me, I just started out with, kind of tell me what you know. And then we kind of fixed what wasn't correct, because I think, to Charles and Alyssa's point, they're getting fed so much information and it may or may not be accurate. So for me, it was really important that the accuracy and the correct information was coming from me as her mom. And then also just that weekend away got us out of our normal environment where we kind of normalized anytime she did have a question. So middle school was kind of the magic age, I think, for all of us.
Wasn't it on that trip where she jokes about we got a placement right in the middle of it?
Yeah, and that's my practice, the repair. It's one of my, I think I mentioned this in the marriage thing and the kid thing, but it's the one I'm most good at is practicing repair when I've blown it or so in the middle of this retreat, we had just kind of dove into foster care, and Micah was already in our home, and I think we had Maddie at that time, but we got a call for a newborn straight from the hospital, and they didn't have anyone to take it. So we packed up everything, and Emily was all on board, and as a 7th grader, I think, at that time. And so in the middle of it, it got a little skewed, so we had to kind of go back to the information.
Probably like, thank God I don't have to talk
yeah,
about
I think
sex
it was
with
a
my
little
mom
bit
anymore.
like, Mom, there's no one there to take that baby, and she loved babies, always has loved babies. So, but middle school was kind of the age range, I think, that we kind of
I
began.
don't think so.
Okay.
This is what I remember.
Uh-oh, don't believe everything you hear.
I remember me and Zach shared a room above the garage, and you came in, and I was probably 15, 16. Zach was probably 13. And y'all barged in. I'm like, does someone have cancer? Did my grandparents just die? Yeah, y'all both barged in, and you're like, y'all good? And we're like, yeah, I think we're good. What's going on? And you're like, y'all know about sex and stuff? And we said, yes, sir.
I do not remember this.
Promise. I'll call Zach right now.
That don't mean anything.
He said, y'all know about sex? I said, yeah, I think we know about it, Dad. I think we know enough. And he's like, all right, well, if you have any questions, me and your mom are downstairs. You can come to us at any time. See you. Goodbye. Have a good one.
I think you did something though for y'all that don't know. Tyler and I started dating in high school. We've known each other since 2nd grade. So we were learning about, the conversations. If he was having them with his parents, I likely was at the same time in a different household. I don't think you didn't do well, but you did well like vicariously, because I was more terrified of having to tell you that we have had sex than I was
After
of the Lord
marriage.
knowing. Yes.
Yes,
like
you don't have to tell me that.
Yeah, no. So I think you did something. I knew that your family came from a household that had an order of things and how relationships were supposed to go. So I think you did something.
But I don't know if we kept that open door like we just learned about in that past session. I think it was very uncomfortable. I don't know.
Yes.
And so I think,
Agreed.
again, I'm glad it didn't happen. Praise God. I made it out on the other side. All is well. But I do wish, learning from you, which you're awesome, but I do want to make sure that I do a better job of kind of introducing, having those conversations with our 3 kids, even at a young age.
But even not to make excuses.
We're on question 1. We got like 10
I know.
questions.
We'll just skip all the questions. But it's a different day. Like it is and that was only like 10, 15 years ago.
No, social media wasn't around when we were in middle school.
I mean,
Facebook came out when we
you
were in
parents
5th
that got
grade.
young kids like Tyler, it's crazy out there.
And I just want y'all to say, there's a lot of babies in the back. Marley, she's 4 years old. She is on Disney Plus, and we didn't do a very good job monitoring it, but we walked downstairs and she's watching the show on Disney Plus. It is called Out, and it's all about a boy, or is it a boy or a girl? A boy coming out to his parents, and she's on episode 2 or 3. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? Where do we live? And so parents of young kids, this stuff is important, and you're going to have that conversation sooner than later. And they did a great job of kind of how to implement that at such a young age. But carry on.
Yeah, for sure. That kind of answered the next question, which was, when do you think is a good age? And we've all agreed that obviously sooner the better, and it's getting sooner and sooner just with media and technology. It ain't what it used to be. I learned at youth camp, by the way, so like Pastor Charles said, even if my parents assumed, oh, she goes to a Christian school, she has Christian friends. I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk about it. I learned it at a youth camp, what sex was, and I was mortified, by the way. I was absolutely mortified. And so I think it's going to happen anywhere. Yeah.
Next question, and I'll let you speak for just Micah. What are your rules around technology and social media for Micah?
Yeah, so Micah does have a phone. It doesn't have service. We've just chosen that. I think not that that's the right thing to do, but I think you have to just kind of know your kid and what they're capable of and what they can handle. And obviously, all the parameters around setting parental controls. It gets knocked off at a certain hour in the night. It's not housed or docked in his room in the evening. It's in the kitchen, and his room is upstairs, and obviously the kitchen is downstairs. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think he'll often say, and you guys will hear it, I'm sure you hear it, but he'll say, well, all my friends have service. And, they try to use that, and I don't think it's true. But also, you have to be the parent and be like, well, you ain't all your friends. There's a time to parent and a time to be friends, and our job is to be their parent.
Yeah, and the social media piece, too. I have heard from people much smarter than me to hold off as long as possible with social media.
He wants a YouTube page.
He wants
and
Snapchat. He wants, all the things. But we don't have any of it right now. So I do think you just need to know your child, and not that he's even done anything to make us distrust him.
I distrust him.
Because he's a teenage boy.
He's a boy.
Because he's a teenage boy.
Because he's got a what?
Oh, my goodness.
I don't
Say
know.
it.
You tell me, Tyler.
Say it. Say the word. They wouldn't say it earlier. They still have yet to say it.
Yeah.
So we'll get them to do it by the end of it.
But I will say, my dad is not technology savvy whatsoever. He has to have help getting into his iPad on
Or converting a Word document to a PDF.
It's very,
but we're good.
He has put his foot down. He does understand the implications of what can happen when these young kids get these things, this stuff on their phone, and he'll reach out to just about anyone. I guess what I'm saying is, people know technology in your sphere of influence.
Mm-hmm.
Lean on them.
Yeah.
Let them, hey, I don't know how to lock my phones down. Hey, Pastor Charles, can you help me? Hey, so-and-so, can you help me? Ask your kid to help you. But it is very, very important. Saying just because I don't know technology, it's not a good enough excuse anymore. You got to throw that crap away. It doesn't matter. It's too important. And so get somebody that you know in your sphere of influence and let them lock that stuff down for you.
And I would just add, passcodes, things like that. You as the parent need those codes. I think I read, on, I think it was on Midlothian Moms. It was someone that posted, I hope she's not in here, but she posted something
I
like.
hope she is. She needs to hear this.
I know you moms will give me, good advice here, but my son won't give up the password to my phone, to his phone. What do I do? I'm like, you take the phone, right? Because I'm sure that it was a 14-year-old. So I think some of us need to just take some control in that area to say these are the parameters around it. I did bring a resource, not any comparable to all the books that are back there and how you're going to be resourced, but when Micah did get his phone, even though it doesn't have service, Josh Shipp, who I follow just with a lot of foster care, he was a foster kid, grew up in the system, and is now just an amazing dude, but he's got quite the story. But he has a really cool website that just has a lot of parent resources on it, and he has a family cell phone agreement. So it's basically like a contract. Normally, I'm not good at these. It's like a chore chart. I was never good at a chore chart because it required a whole lot of me. But we literally sat with Micah and went down of all these things. And it's not a bunch of like rules. It's kind of the whys that are behind them. But it's also kind of funny. And Micah, so I don't want you guys to leave here saying, Micah thinks we wrote this. So he's like, wow, y'all took a lot of time writing all this stuff out. And I'm like, yep, because we're just good like that. But I just want to read a few that I think are key. And then I brought a bunch of copies if you wanted to use them. Now, if your kids already have phones and you have to undo some of this, it may be a little harder to get them on board. But if your kid does not have a phone yet and you're looking for something, this is an amazing start. But listen to this one. I promise I will tell my parents when I receive suspicious or alarming phone calls or text messages from people I don't know. I will also tell my parents if I'm being harassed by someone via my cell phone, and it says initial here. I will make an effort. Let me see. I'm going to find it I will not lie about where I have been or how I'm using the phone. I promise to answer questions openly, honestly, and directly. I will never use my phone or social media to bully or tease anyone, even if my friends think it's funny. I understand that my behavior on my phone can impact my future reputation, even in ways that I am not able to predict or see. I will never search for porn or anything else that I wouldn't want my grandma finding. I will not send or receive naked photos ever. I understand that there could be serious legal consequences that could put mine and my parents' future at risk. What I love about this is it's proactive. It's talking about, and Alyssa, I'm going to use teaching outside the moment. This is before anything has ever happened. And again, when you're in that safe zone of that, where you're not reprimanding or serving a consequence out, when you can kind of lay all this out, this is what you get. This is, in turn, this is what happens when you breach or break one of these rules. And so if you don't have something like this in place, or talk about, sometimes I think we just hand off our kids a cell phone and then, hope they do all these things. But if you can really be accurate in making a plan, creating a plan for the parameters around the ability to get to use a phone.
Awesome. Culture is constantly teaching our kids about sex against God's design. How should we consistently reinforce God's design for sex and sexuality?
Oh. I don't know if this answers that particular question. But I think this is important. The guy, King David in the Bible, he had a really bad mistake, and then his kids went crazy. And I think part of the reason he allowed his kids to go crazy, because he had lost his moral authority. And so, guys, a lot of times, maybe the reason we're not addressing it and challenging it is because we're struggling with it. And we just got to be clean. Like, we're talking about all these lockdowns and filters for our kids. Men, we need lockdown and filters for our stuff. We have to be proactive in it. And then we can talk to our kids potentially about our struggle if that's an issue, but I think we have to have the moral authority to be able to speak into these. And the devil, he'll rob you of your confidence. If you're not getting victory over a certain thing, then you can't identify it, call it out, and challenge your kids. So I would really say, men, get an accountability partner. Get software on your phone. Make sure you're blocked where you can't get to certain sites, because it's just a challenge. It's a crazy world. So I don't think that answered the question, but
That's good. That's good.
I think it starts with the parent, and that's awesome. Segueing into this pornography discussion. So we're assuming that your child has now discovered it, or they've accidentally popped up onto it. What does the conversation look like for a child that is struggling with pornography? And I say child, but it can be, teenager, 18. I mean, it's what would you do? What would your conversation look like?
I mean, porn. It messes with you. So I would begin with all the pre-stuff, locking down everything, making sure it doesn't happen again, and getting him or her you want to help me get in a group with accountability, and not taking it lightly, but not bringing a bunch of shame, condemnation, or guilt, but grace and love, but truth. Explain the consequences of porn. I mean, and it ruins everything. Like it destroys
God's design.
Yeah, it destroys God's design. So, I mean, that's what I would say. What would you say, Tyler?
No, I think that's good. I think you might not have done it directly to me and Zach, but you did it indirectly. We always had a very strong understanding that porn will destroy your life. It will quickly. It's like a poison. I think you even taught one time, like it'll spread faster than any cancer out there. And so I think giving those facts about that, facts around pornography and how it can shape and mold your mind, and I think you did do that pretty well, and I think it did help us. I think we recognize when every person, every kid, every guy on the basketball team was doing it, we still knew our Father was saying, no, it will wreck you. It doesn't matter who's doing it.
Yeah, and I can remember growing up even watching movies. Tyler, you would attest to this. I mean, Dad, if there was like a kissing scene, even Dad would be like, cover your eyes. Cover your eyes. I mean, he still does that to this day.
No. We were 16, and Tyler was taking me on a date to a movie. And he said that his parents wouldn't let us. I don't even remember the movie. It was something where romance was involved at some point in the movie. But I mean, my parents were letting me see it. I don't know what that meant. But he was, though, allowed to go see Braveheart. Yeah. So I guess we're good with the heads getting chopped off.
No, we erred on the side of violence.
Yeah.
We made up for it. We let them watch violent stuff.
Yes.
But
a kid that wasn't allowed.
No sex scenes.
Well, Braveheart
end up having
on
one
hour. On the first hour and the 43-minute and the 28
he
second.
Remembered
that girl got naked, and that is ingrained in my mind.
It's still etched in your
man.
Yes.
Onward.
Yes. No, not good. It's your.
Last question. What advice would you give to these parents who are facing the very real challenges of raising their kids in this sexual culture that is against God's design? And so if you could answer this, talk to me like you're giving me advice. So I have 3 kids. You're their grandparents. How would you tell us, just combat that?
I would model your marriage. I would say love your wife as Christ loved the church. Let them see. It's better for them to see it than, you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And so let them see a godly marriage. Let them see 2 people that know how to deal with conflict and love each other in spite of challenges and difficulties, and honor one another. Like open the door for her and treat her like a queen. I think it's better, follow me as I follow Christ. We can tell them, but we've got to be revealing and showing them.
That's good. And then now direct it more for the sexual culture. So it's running rampant. How give us some advice on how to raise our children in just a crazy sexual culture.
I would just say be attuned. Be attuned to what they're watching. Be attuned to who they're hanging out with. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about friend groups here, but friend groups are really, really important. Monitoring those, knowing the homes that they're going into and the exposure that they could have. If I had it to do over, I said I wasn't going to say this because I know this is like, if I had it to do over, we would not do sleepovers anywhere. We just wouldn't do it. I don't know what's in homes, and this is church world, non-church world. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think anything good happens after midnight. I think there's a lot of
I
experimentation.
don't think anything good happens
9
after like
9
9,
p.m. Yeah.
9:30.
No, 8:30 for you. 8:30 for
You're
you.
about to turn into a
But
pumpkin as we speak.
I would just be
I know
very,
it's time to go
very,
to bed.
I would be very, very, very cautious as to that. And I think, movie channels, if you have movie channels in your home, I wouldn't have them. There's just too much temptation there. I mean, even when codes are set up, I just think you need to be very, very mindful of that. And don't be naive. I think Stan and I were, can I just say this?
Yes.
I think
naive.
we were very naive and we were very trusting, of our kids, of our 3 older kids, which has paved the way for Micah where we don't trust anybody. So I don't know. That's probably
You
another
ruined it,
support
Tyler.
group either. But
Praise God.
but
I'm
I would
helping him.
just say, I just think, those friend groups are really, really key, and monitoring those and know who your kids are hanging out with and know the people speaking in and over your kids' lives and is really, really important.
That's good. That's good. We're going to invite Pastor Charles and Alyssa back up, and we're going to open it up if you guys have any questions. And we can stay on this topic. We can go outside this topic on just raising kids. And we would love to try to answer some of you guys' questions if you have any. I was hoping no one would ask a question.
This is one too.
So I would love to hear your advice on how do you move backwards. You have a teenager, you didn't get it all right, they're probably on too many social media platforms. What does that look like?
I would practice the repair. Say, I have not served you well, and I want to put boundaries around some things that are going to make you better. And honestly, I mean, in a setting where if there's nothing that's currently going on or a line that's been crossed, it's probably going to be received really well. So I would just practice saying, you know what? And just be honest. Like, we've had to be honest with our kids saying, you know what, we didn't know what we were doing. We were too trusting, which when you're too trusting, it puts a lot on the kid. So, but when we're, as parents, we're putting some boundaries around it, it creates this safety net. And so I would just apologize for that and then go backwards.
Perfect, thank you.
And I would just add the why behind why you're having this conversation. You want your son or daughter to grow up to be a godly man or woman after God's own heart. And so saying, hey, this is what pornography does. This is how it can end marriages. It will destroy you. And I want to do everything I can as a mother to protect you from that and raise a godly man, boy or girl. Any other questions?
Someone make Pastor Stan say the word penis. That's
I just want to know if anyone here has this fear, like mental health. So times like with everything that's going around, my youngest is 17, and if I want to discipline, I feel like I have to watch what I'm gonna say, because I don't know when he goes upstairs, maybe I'm reading too much of stuff that's going on. But what advice would you guys have on that topic?
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. So when you need to address something with your 17-year-old, but there's some distance between you,
Of course.
you're afraid it's going to create more
Right, like,
stress.
yes.
Yeah. Can you give me a little bit more specific? as to kind of maybe an example of what that would look like? It doesn't have to be a real life example, but if it's something you could like.
Yes. Like suicidal thoughts and,
Like how
So-
you would handle a situation could cause
So,
suicidal?
She's saying that by correcting and putting up boundaries, whatever, that could lead to suicidal
Spiraling,
thoughts, self-harm,
shame,
downward spiral.
suicidal thoughts.
correct.
depression.
Yes.
Wow.
And
mean,
again,
I'm just
it's because of,
Go-
stuff that I've read that has happened to other families. So it's a fear. Like I have this fear, like maybe I shouldn't, I really want to tell you this, but I'm not because I don't know how you're going to react to it.
Yeah. Wow, that's really tough. That's really tough. I've always been a firm believer that, connection is the secret sauce. And so the more avenues that we can create to just have community with our kiddo in a safe place, I think you saying that, my desire is that if there's anything ever going on with you that you need to talk to someone, I would hope that you could confide in me to where you're almost building this bridge, again, when the stakes are low, that practicing outside the moment, and really create, because do you have this sense, I feel like I have so many questions, do you have this sense like there's not that connection that you have, or it comes and goes?
It depends on the situation, I feel
Yeah.
like. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I just think creating those open communication, where they feel safe enough to come to you with anything. Charles, you want to add to
I would
that?
just add too that I think it's important to, I don't know who you're listening to or getting your resources from, but I think it's always healthy we want to gain perspective. And so the more that you're able to take those worst case scenarios that you've heard about and classify it as, okay, cool, let me just let this build to my perspective framework, but not allow that to dominate your perspective, if that makes sense. Because for every story you hear that, I mean, there's hundreds of other stories of kids being disciplined and it turning out really, really well. And so
That's good.
and that's a scary outcome, and so it's easy for fear to take over. But honestly, just not to be too spiritual, I really think you need to pray about this and ask God to give you proper perspective.
Good.
And don't lose that thought, because again, sure, keep that perspective, maybe go about things differently, but you can't allow that to prevent you from doing your job as a mom.
Yeah, and I'll also add, behavior is communication. So when our kiddos are behaving a certain way, it's actually communicating something or even an unmet need. So it's our job to kind of be the detective there and say, hey, what need isn't really being met? And what can I do about that? So I think kind of you have to discern a little bit of what's really behind the behavior. And a lot of times we want to level the consequence or the discipline or whatever we're doing. We want to level it at the behavior, at the child, where you want to attack this as the behavior. Like what's the underlying, what's the root of it? And I think when we can kind of change our filter a little bit to look at like what's he really saying here? I think when we can be that detective, we can get a lot of insight.
Thank you.
Hopefully that was helpful. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Really tough.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys?
John, you got a question, brother? No, not yet.
Singleness is a season. It's a gift.
Singleness is a whole lot easier than all this, right, John?
So what do you do when the discipline you're doing for your child is not working? They're getting kicked off the bus and they're not listening in school?
Well, again, I want to reframe the word discipline because we think discipline is what kind of punishment are we doing, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to shift us to be thinking that discipline is teaching or training. So we have to look at that totally different because the punishment isn't going to get a different result.
Right.
But the teaching and the training of what we're wanting the outcome to be is where we get results. So if you can give me an example, the bus. So being kicked off the bus.
Yes, he's got kicked off the bus 4 times now.
Okay. And is it what's around that being kicked off the bus? What is he doing?
Jumping over the seat, hitting people.
Okay. Okay. And then when you use the word discipline, what happened?
I just take things from him, like his devices, sometimes toys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would just say again, and these are difficult things. And again, I mean, I don't mean to keep going back to this, every behavior is communication of something, but it really is true. So, and I'm not in your home, and I don't know the specifics around the dynamics of just your home and what you've done as far as trying to help him get a different, to get a different result. But I would say, put on that detective eye and that lens of, what's really going on here. Is he upset about something? Is somebody on the bus, provoking him to do what he's doing? Are relationships difficult for him? Are social settings difficult for him? And if all those answers, are yes, or maybe something is going on, then I try to get to the root of that and try to, we can't, as moms, we can't fix everything, but we can ask the right questions. And again, not in the heat of the moment, but like later. The why do you do that doesn't necessarily always work, because when they say, I don't know why I do that, to Charles's point and Alyssa's point, that frontal lobe it's not fully developed. So when they say they don't know why they did that, guess what? They don't know why they did that. And so a lot of times we just want them to say, why, right? And we're not going to get answers. But getting to the root of like the need that is there, the need that's going unmet, really, trying to find that and hone in on that will be helpful.
And like Angie said, so much of it is connection. And so the more you're able to not forget this is still your child, you love them, and just spending time with them and helping to create that connection and get stronger and helping them to see, it's not labeling them as the problem. Like, you're not just this kid who keeps getting kicked off. You're still my kid. I love you. The more we're able to do that and keep it simple in that way, it really does help lead to solutions in that. Because like Angie talked about, a lot of times it's a safety thing and just different things they're battling with. So the more, I can't remember if it was a son or a daughter.
Son.
The more that he's able to know that my mom has got my back and she's in my corner, it's only going to help things. Yeah. We got time for one more. I think there was a hand that was, yeah. Caleb, one more question. You got to run, man.
I'll make it short. So we have a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old. So we have the blessing of time in our hands, but how do we talk to them about sexuality in a world where it's pretty open conversation, right? I've nannied kids where they're being taught about, they're being invited to an LGBTQ club in elementary school. Or anything like that. But how do we teach them about sexuality without condemning the person that identifies as gay or identifies as transgendered? Because we do have someone in our family who is gay, and he's a phenomenal human being, but how do we teach them the biblical standpoint,
Yeah. So the book that we have is going to be a great resource. So definitely start with that. I also say I've become somewhat of a student of this stuff, and there are amazing people you can follow on social media who give you such great tips. One of them, they have a website, they have a whole parenting course if you wanted to buy it. It's called Moral Revolution, and so much of their content that they come out with, I mean, it's amazing. So that's definitely a plug to those things. And it's so much of it, like we were saying, it's not like it's this perfect thing, but it's conversations, even like I was saying. So, it may not be saying that pornography word, at that age, but does that make you feel yucky in your stomach, or even to use, they may know what scared is at that point. So do you feel scared? They may not know uncomfortable, but it's the terminology that they use, and it's trying to teach in moments, like exactly what Angie's saying too, and what we've said, like outside of, if you're watching a movie and that comes up, maybe identifying kind of how that is, so that can like segue into those type of conversations about sex, but not necessarily saying the word because they're still younger.
And I think too, the reason why I use the word distortion on purpose, because I think it helps to really categorize and help even at a young age understand God's good design. I mean, that encompasses way more than just sex, right? It's how we treat people, how we live, our thought life, all these things. And so there's hundreds of things will fall under the category of distortion. And so helping them to see it from that lens too, like that transgender, I forget the specifics, but family member, they're distorting God's good design in the way they're living their life. So it's not this writing off, oh, they're evil, oh, they're bad. They're just like, no, they're distorting it. From what they're living in, what their situation is, and we all battle with distortions of God's good design. We all are going to have things in which we're going to change it, but when we distort God's design, we don't get God's results that He wants for us. And so I do think language is really key in how we raise them up, and we want to be careful not to create these stigmas that, because this isn't some subgroup of society that we want to look down on. We're called to love them, we're called to be salt and light to them, but still understanding that what they're engaging in is a distortion. So we have to be careful about that because distortions can spread.
That's good. I'd echo this book by Jackie Hill Perry, and it's the story of who I was and who God has always been. It's called Gay Girl, Good God. Amazing resource. Amazing resource. It's really, really good.
And I would say, you have a 3-year-old, we have a 4-year-old and 3-year-old. Whatever you tell them, they will be repeating. So just be so careful how you
That's why I ask.
word it, because they will run up to said person and say something that you maybe didn't intend for. So just be so careful. Learn from me.